Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Take Out the Stigma of Grief Week. We are in day 3 of our grief sessions, and this afternoon we're going to be talking about what I wish I knew before my loved one died. My name is Nicole Fulmer, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Delaware Hospice, and I'm very excited today to welcome Kathy Bowers. She will be speaking today. Kathy is from Point to Point Wealth Planning. Welcome, Kathy.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, especially the day before Thanksgiving. Before we get started, would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and perhaps what you do on a daily basis, and then maybe about the connection that you have with Delaware Hospice?
Okay, great. So kind of briefly, I've been an advisor for 23 years with Point to Point Wealth Planning, which is part of Ameriprise Financial. And our specialty, really what we help people with is around planning. So that's where this kind of presentation came to life, is that we're a lot more than just investments. We like to think of the holistic picture of everything you do, because everything affects everything else. So how much you save is going to affect how much you're going to leave to your loved ones when you pass, which is where this came about. And my brief reason why I started this presentation was my passion is around estate planning and making sure that people leave as much as possible to the people they want to, whether it's an organization like Delaware Hospice or their children, cousins, whoever it may be. And a lot of people were coming to me saying, I wish I had known this before my mom passed, or my dad, or my sister. And it was common themes. And so I said, a lot of people could use this information. And it's honestly a conversation starter. That's what the point of this is to start conversations in families. I'm so grateful that I can share this with hospice, because it's been really well received. And my experience with hospice, when I first moved to Delaware, I started in the training here because I wanted to find a local organization to get back, and everybody said Delaware Hospice, so great reputation. And then my mom, who lives in West Virginia, actually was in hospice for a bit, not with Delaware Hospice, but it just makes you realize how important a service this is. And I couldn't have done it without them. And I know so many people that have gone through Delaware Hospice. And what I think just warms my heart is that Delaware Hospice, even if you don't have a loved one going through hospice treatment, all the programs are available. And hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder. You'll probably say that, but that amazed me. I love it. It's why I'll support this organization every single day. That you offer your services to everybody, not just people in hospice.
You didn't steal my thunder at all. In fact, we love it when people say things and we don't have to.
Okay.
No, but it is so true. And at the end, I'll just mention some of the other programs that we do offer. So thank you again, Kathy. And what struck me when I first met Kathy, and we started having these conversations about how we might be able to partner a little bit and help each other out, is this worksheet that you had, this checklist about what you had put together from over the years. And so I just love this checklist and thought, maybe we can break this apart into a presentation and walk people through it. So after this presentation, I can send that out to everyone on this workshop so that you all have it, because I think it's something tangible, something very easy. It's just a one-pager, literally like a checklist that you can look at and go through step by step to help you in some planning. All right, well, let's just jump in here. And these are the 5 major documents that Kathy has said. Basically, this is kind of like estate planning 101. So Kathy, do you want to walk through those for us?
Yeah, real quickly. I mean, we want to focus on other things, but I think these are the documents that all attorneys tell me. Again, speaking with you guys, the HIPAA release is important to make sure that goes to your doctor, whoever you want to share information with. Beneficiary designations as an advisor. This is what we review this every single year with our clients, because you don't realize how things change. I think you can speak a little bit more on the Advanced Healthcare Directive, Nicole. That's your area of specialty for sure.
Sure.
But that is what some people believe is the most important document. It depends on who you ask, right? Will is just what do you want to have happen to your property? You can get really detailed with a will if you'd like, or trusts can be set up on that. We could have a whole hour on that, so we're not going to go over there, but just you should have a will and a financial power of attorney as well, which is different than the healthcare directive. A lot of people think it's the same thing, but you need two different documents. Most attorneys will create the bottom three, so the 3, 4, and 5 as a package deal. So usually if you go in for a will, they're going to recommend 3 and 5 as well.
All right, thank you very much. And I know before my husband passed away, I had no idea that I needed to do these things. And because he didn't have any of them, it made it, a little bit more difficult. And sometimes it's not until you are experienced this and you're going through something that you realize, oh, so again, so important. And hopefully maybe a topic for a future session.
Yeah, we could probably do
So
just a
start
seminar
looking
on that.
yes, I think so. So here we have, we're going to go through these, the top 10 list, I suppose, call it. So number 1, your master list about, the importance of having a list in one place. Sadly, I don't have this and I really need to, but just to have everything all together in one place, surely just convenience sake. And Kathy, you had said about, the importance of looking at things every year and looking at this with your spouse. And, I know that sometimes in families, there's one person that generally handles the finances, but it's important to share that should something happen, and the other spouse may not be as aware.
Right.
Passwords. Oh, this is always a fun one. I mean, how many of us have so many passwords and then have to reset the passwords because we can't remember? Also, to have a place where your papers are stored. I think back to my grandparents who put things under the mattress, or my grandmother who put all important documents in her freezer in case of a fire. I guess it made sense, but is somebody really going to know that it's stuck between 2 lean cuisines? Maybe
Right.
not, unless you you share it with them.
Right.
And that hidden money. And I have that in quotes. I think it was my grandparents' generation who did hide some money. Was talking to someone who, after their loved one died, they were going through the home, and somebody said, "Oh, I love this picture, but I can't stand the frame." They took it out of the frame, and $100 bill fell out, and they found that their family member was hiding money in the picture frames. So again, the importance of maybe sharing that with someone.
Yeah.
So those are
really important to not do it is my number one.
Yes, I was going to say, is there anything you want to tell us not to do?
When you're going to remember that, like if I hit it today, in 5 years, am I going to remember where I hid things? And I think it's really important to let somebody know you can get safes these days that are very inexpensive, that aren't super heavy. There's a lot of fireproof boxes that you can buy on Amazon. It'd be a great holiday gift for everybody. And that way you can put all your documents, your important papers, your master list can all just go in this fireproof safe box. If you need cash, put it there. But my only request is if it's done by a key or a passcode, please share that with somebody, because they need to get in there if you pass.
Yes, very, very important.
Yes.
All right, moving on to number 2 to talk about beneficiaries. Kathy, if it's okay, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, beneficiaries for us is probably one of the most important things. Real briefly, from your first slide about the important documents, people don't realize that when somebody passes, the order that's looked at for bequeathing your asset is if it's owned jointly with somebody. Typically, the default is joint with rights of survivorship. So if you have a joint bank account with your spouse, maybe your child or your parent, if you own it joint with them, it will default right to them. It won't look at your will, won't look at beneficiaries yet. Secondly, they're going to look for a contractual agreement. So if you have a 401k, if you have a retirement plan, if you have life insurance, these typically have a contractual beneficiary arrangement on them. So what we recommend really very carefully is making sure that you're reviewing those beneficiaries on an annual basis. We do this with our clients every year, accounts here and outside. Especially important because you don't realize maybe the default on most companies is spouse and then your children. Well, if your children have children, if there's grandchildren, do you want those grandchildren to get it if, gosh forbid, your child predeceases you, or do you want it to go to the surviving child? They call this per stirpes. I'm happy to answer questions more detailed. That goes down a bit of a rabbit hole. But you can't just assume what the default is. You really need to read it, make sure it's appropriate. And if there's a life event, divorce, death of any of your beneficiaries, you need to go in and update them. So that's why we say it's really important to do an annual review. If you don't have a beneficiary on your account, now it will go through a will. So if you have a will, so typically your house is going to be using the will, your will then identify who that goes to. If you have none of those things, then the state has a will for you. And I usually try and preface this to people that you think, okay, well, I've got a spouse and I've got kids, it's just going to go to them. And that's not always the case. It's very state specific, so it depends on where you live. But in Delaware, for example, some of my assets might not all go to my kids. It might also go to my sister if I have a sister still living, or my parents if my parents are still living, and it's not really what I want to have happen. So really important, very cheap, inexpensive is to put a beneficiary on. It's a form, it's a document the institution can give you. So.
Something very simple, but
A little passionate about that
powerful.
part because we just see it done wrong so many times, and it's just it's just something that just takes a little bit of time.
And makes a huge impact in what you want. I forgot to mention right before I introduce Kathy, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to just jump in or comment if there's a point of clarification, or feel free to put something in the chat as well. We really want this to be engaging and a conversation as well with everyone.
Absolutely.
All right, so our next slide, I'll talk to this one. It's in my wheelhouse about an advance directive. If you don't have one, it's so important to create one. Once someone turns 18, they're able to create an advance directive. And basically, this is just a document that outlines what your wishes are from a healthcare perspective. And you can document, there's 3 things in here that I have in this little image. The first is what we call a healthcare power of attorney. Who is that person that you would like to be designated to speak on your behalf? Perhaps you are in an accident and can't speak, or you're in a coma. This would be the person that would make the decisions, knowing what it is that you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be a family member or a spouse. Some people, they say, you know what, this is what I want, but my wife isn't going to be able to do that. So I'm going to name my brother. So just something, to keep in mind. The second component in an advance directive relates to those decisions for end of life. And this is where we can put information in about curative treatment. If you want chemo, if you want radiation, if you want surgery, or if you don't, because it's also important to note what you don't want. We hear in the pandemic a lot about ventilators. Is that something that you would like? Would you like to be resuscitated? Should your heart stop? So there's many, many things. And I have to say that the Delaware Advance Directive is a little cumbersome. It's not the most customer friendly document, because these do vary state by state, and it can be a little scary. So it's always nice to walk through it with someone. And then this third component relates to being an organ donor. And it's not as simple as, yes, I'm an organ donor that you have on your license, but it goes into a little bit more detail. If it is just, say, your corneas or your heart and your lungs, maybe you don't want some other part, and you can designate that. And also, if you would like to donate your body to science, or perhaps to an organization like the Kidney Foundation. So there's some options right there. But really, it's very important, again, that you document this so that your wishes are honored with dignity and respect. And this is something, like
Nicole,
Kathy said, that sometimes is bundled. Yes. Somebody have a question?
yeah, well, it's not a question. It's more
Oh,
of
yeah, go
just a
ahead.
thought that I had back in July. A friend of mine asked me to help her fill out her advanced directives. And so
Yes.
we did that. And she actually asked me if I would become her healthcare power of attorney. Although she was married, she asked me to do it because she said that she felt strongly that if anything ever happened to her, that her husband would not follow through with her wishes.
Yes.
And that, he would try everything possible to keep her alive. And that's not what she wanted. So
Right.
they agreed that I could become that person for the family if anything ever happened to her.
Thank you so much for sharing, Arlene. And that does happen quite a bit. And the person that's chosen needs to be able to honor that, to be able to, like in a crisis situation, be able to step in and say, this is what is important. And I know I've known you for a couple of years, Arlene, and it does not surprise me that your friend would choose you, to be able to do that and to help her. All right, number 4. This is about your legacy. And I cannot take credit for this, sharing what you've earned versus what you've learned, but I just love this idea. That what you've earned, sometimes that's all we think about that material wealth and what it is you're going to leave for someone. But there's many, many things that you can leave as part of your legacy. We say here, make sure you document who you want to receive certain things. In my family, I've already told my mom, I get the ice chest and my brother gets the grandfather clock because, I have one. But, you don't want something to happen after a loved one passes where you're fighting over things. And, you may have a piece of jewelry, for example, or an antique that you want to go to a particular person in the family or a particular friend. Someone told me the other day that they have these beautiful paintings and there's a story behind each painting. And so on the back of it, she wrote who she wants to have it with a little story about the importance of that to her and why she chose that person. Leaving money to charity is always a wonderful thing. If there's a cause that you're so much a part of in your life, to be able to leave some money to that organization. And
can I touch on that real quick,
learned.
Nicole?
Oh,
On the
yes,
leaving money
please
to a
do.
charity, because this is something a lot of people don't realize. And I think this is really important because they a lot of times will leave the charity in the will. And if most of your assets, like I mentioned before, are through a beneficiary designation, then it won't see the will and it doesn't follow through with what you want. So it's really important to have either the attorney, the advisor matching the two and making sure it does it. And a recommendation or just something food for thought is when you're leaving money to a charity, a lot of times it's great to leave your retirement plan, like your IRA, your 401k, 403bs, things like that, because a charity doesn't pay taxes when they receive it. So it's really impactful and more money now goes to them. If it has to get distributed out of that plan first and the will says it, they're going to have to pay taxes at potentially like a 35% bracket, and then the charity gets it. So that's a lot of money going to the IRS, which is okay if that's what you
but it may not be what you
charity, which I think most people would prefer. It's really important to know kind of what you're leaving. So again,
that is very, very important. I was not as familiar with that. That is wonderful to know. Thank you. And just this other component, there are people who may not have a lot to leave behind in terms of that material wealth, the money or the items. But there are so many wonderful things like stories that get passed down over the generation, jokes that get passed down, recipes. We're going into Thanksgiving, and a lot of people probably have their grandmother's recipe for something, to really be able to pass those things down within your legacy as well. And I already talked about like the photos or the art. I just think that's such a wonderful idea and something simple to do. My cat has just jumped up on my table, so if you see a furry creature, I apologize in advance. The joys of working from home. Okay, number 5, your burial plan. So it's always helpful if, before your loved one passes, if you have that conversation about what you want done. Depending on so many factors, you may want to be cremated, buried, maybe you want your body donated to science. So if you have that, you can do that, or you have the ability to even pay for that. Just think about what a beautiful gift that is to those loved ones that you've left behind. Because when someone passes, and you're hit with, oh my gosh, how much does that cost? It can just add another layer of grief. So if you've thought this out and you can prepay it in advance, it's a wonderful gift. And just some thoughts here regarding cremation that I've picked up along the way. Let people know what you want done with your ashes. There was a woman I had spoken with several months ago who wanted this written in her advance directive that she wanted her ashes spread near the Cape May Lighthouse. But she said you had to make sure that it happened at, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what it was, high tide versus low tide, because with one, the ashes would come back into the sand. She's like, I don't want to be on the sand. I want to be in the ocean. So, you write down that those ashes have to be in the water. And also, there are certain requirements if you are traveling and scattering ashes. I may or may not know someone who was a Cowboys fan and may or may not have her ashes sprinkled on the 50-yard line. I'll just put that out there. But there are some requirements, that you want to keep in mind, and let people know, what it is that you would like done. Anything there? Anything you want to share, Kathy? Maybe from an experience with a client?
I think you kind of covered it. Again, I just think it's trying to think 2 or 3 steps ahead. And if there's even just like the burial plan, if you want a religious service, if you don't want a religious service, if there's a specific place you want services held, that is all really helpful. Sometimes we think being detail, like, oh, I'm telling them too many things, or I'm being demanding. And it's the best gift you can leave behind is to let people know what you want. So there's no arguing. My sister and I argued, unfortunately, when my mom passed, and we thought we knew what she wanted, but we had one little small detail. And you don't, when you're in that emotional state, if you don't have to think, that is a great gift to those that you find. So don't think of it as being annoying. Think about it as this is a gift. I think
it truly is. And that's a perfect segue, because that is our next slide. Look at how good you are. Have you done this presentation?
It's almost
before?
like I've done
So in addition to what Kathy said, some other things I've heard from people. One woman who had a sparkler send off at her wedding said she wanted that done at her funeral. There's some interesting things. Someone else said that they wanted their pet's ashes to be buried with them. And again, if you know these things and you can honor them, it is just such a wonderful feeling, and that you did what that person wanted. I have down here about the music, the flowers, the prayers. A member of my family is highly allergic to flowers and, was adamant, do not have flowers at my funeral. I know I'm dead, but I still don't like them. So, these little things. I think that it's just good to talk about it. And sometimes this might be an easy, more lighthearted way to start a conversation, that can almost start as a joke, but be like, no, I'm serious. Like, this is what I want. And by the way, some other things as well. So we just talked about the pets. So that's another thing that is so important. Have a plan, for your pets. who is going to be able to take care of them? Think about if you live alone, have a backup name and number for your veterinarian so that they know who you've entrusted to care for your little fur babies. Well, it could be birds too, I suppose, and iguanas, but your pets, your little companions, so important. And number 8, just about wrapping these up, your history. So important to just document this. And, this is for those you leave behind, for the generations, the grandchildren, to know the importance of where they came from, who you are, who you were as a person. There's things like your birthplace, but, did you travel? Did you live in, I don't know, Siberia? I don't know why that just came to mind, but it might be neat to just share that with your family. Health history is so, so very important. You want to have those people close to you know what the history is and that it's documented, because it is helpful. Unless you're going to get genetically tested nowadays, I guess you can do that. But again, just to make things easier, if you know you're predisposed to something, to bring that up with a doctor. Anything else, Kathy, you'd like to add to that? Just always like to double check.
I think that pretty much covers that one. And the only
Okay.
thing I would say is we don't really, when people are alive, we kind of go, oh, I don't want to hear this again, or this story. As soon as they're gone, you want all those things. So, be patient, ask, and as the person, again, if you left it in a note or in a folder after the fact, it's again really appreciated.
Yes. This was one I hadn't really thought of, but I think this is so important. Beware of scams. There are people out there, unfortunately, that prey on widows and widowers. Not so much, I would say, but during the pandemic right now, but something someone had said, when you have a funeral, if this is publicized in the paper and that your family and your friends are not going to be at the house, they're going to be at a service and perhaps a luncheon afterward. And that's a prime time to break into someone's home. So to think about having someone watch your home. Also scammers on the telephone. We hear that during the pandemic. People are, their guard is down. They're worried, and people will call and try to take advantage. And it is such a shame, but just something to be aware of, particularly with our elderly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nicole,
finally, yes.
Before
Erlene,
you're
is that you?
finally, yeah.
Yes.
One of the things that I think is really, really important, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because since COVID, I've experienced a lot of deaths. I can
So you
name
have.
3 people who were very important to me that passed away since COVID. And the last one, the second one anyway, was Bob. He was an elderly gentleman that I've known for over 20 years. And I actually happened to be out of town when he died. I was in Florida, and I got the call that he had passed away. And I immediately called his wife, and I asked her, are you alone? And she said, no, the funeral home has just left. And so, because I wanted to recommend to them a certain funeral home, because I knew what their financial situation was. And so she actually ended up having a meeting with the funeral home on the day that he died. And Bob only had a $5,000 policy. And by the time I got home and I went over the bill that the funeral parlor had given her, they had literally used up all but about $300 of that policy. But the sad thing was that she went alone. And so because she went alone, and because, they knew that there was this policy, they used up like what they charged her for, actually $1,700 in an administration fee. And when I called and asked them what was the administration fee for, because they didn't give her an itemized list. They just put a price down. And so I called and said, you know, what is $1,700 for? And they said the administration fee. And I said, what is the administration fee? And they said, well, for her to come here and for her to sit down and for us to take the information. And to me, that was like unbelievable. The transportation fee from her house to the funeral home, less than 2 miles, they charge $700 for that. And so I just think it's really important, and people should know that because this is a vulnerable time, when your loved one dies, you should never go to a funeral home by yourself. Always, you know, take someone with you, or, you know, so for me, I just felt really bad for her because I knew, you know, their financial situation, and it became out of my reach because I was out of town and I wasn't able to help her, because I would have gone with her to the funeral home had I been in Delaware when Bob died.
Right. It's a good
Thank
point.
you
Arlene.
so
We might
much
have
for
to add that.
sharing that. It's
Yes.
very, very important. And, you know, when you are struck with grief, even if you knew it was coming, you know, you're still in this fog and you don't think clearly. It's nearly impossible to be able to concentrate. And it's so important to just have someone there that you trust, that cares about you enough to be your advocate and stay there and help. Thank you so much, Arlene. You're a really good friend. You know that? Those of us that know you know what a good
These are
person you are.
people that have been in my life and I love them. And, you know, because I know Bob and Sue, you know, they're the salt of the earth. And, you know, you just don't want to see your friends being taken advantage of. And I just really felt like, you know, I don't have anything against funeral homes because, you know, there's one that I would have recommended. But, you know, it was just sad to see how, you know, they were taking it. I felt like they were taken advantage of once I got the list, because I was like, well, they charge you, what were they charging you for? And so she couldn't even articulate to me what the charges were. And that's why I said, you know, I need to do a follow-up call. And I did tell this funeral home that, you know, I thought that their prices were outrageous, that they took advantage of her, and that I would never recommend them in the future.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell me offline who that was.
I will.
So that I don't use them either.
Mhm.
Well, number 10 here is kind of, we've woven this throughout the presentation about being a gift for your loved ones. You know, I'm not going to lie, some of these things are difficult to talk about. You know, and when you want to talk about, maybe some people in your family or your friends may not be ready to hear them. But if I can give you any advice at all, it's just like keep trying little by little, to let them know what it is that you want. It truly is a gift. Whatever you can tell people what you want, and you'll feel good about it, and they will too. I promise you that. Kathy, I know you shared about like you and your sister, and that had to be very difficult, but thank you for sharing that. Anything else, like looking back, either on your personal experience or others from, you know, clients that maybe we missed or didn't touch on that you can think of?
The thing that just comes to mind, I think, is how do I start the conversation? So we go through this scenario, says these are all good things, but what do I start with? What's the words I use? And I don't think it depends on if you're the child approaching the parent, are you the parent approaching the child? I think you're right. A lot of people kind of, you know, put their blinders on, but
Yeah.
even if, you know, like you said, you're going to send out this tip sheet, they can contact us, you can send it, you know, it's nothing rocket science. This is just stuff we all kind of know, but it's all in one page. Nice.
Yes.
I sat down with my mom when I was writing this, and I said, you know, I thought, you know, here I am, this is what I do for a living, I would know it all, and I didn't. And it was really eye-opening. And I approached it very delicately as like, this is really important to me. Can we go down this list? And you just get as far as they're comfortable. You get, you might be able to get through the whole list because they think it's wonderful. You might get through one thing. Don't put a lot of pressure on it. But, if you have something, you can check a box. Use it and just say, I was on this wonderful presentation. They gave us this list and I realized I don't know the answers to these things. Can we go through one or two of these? So, that's our gift, I think, to everybody else, is use this for that tool. And
it's yeah, what you said, and it is, it's like multiple.
You might Zoom it right now, but
yeah, you might Zoom it.
Yeah.
And the holidays are upon us, and this is the time when we're really thinking about gratitude. We're thinking about family, and really taking account of our lives, particularly this year. So the conversations, multiple conversations probably, but maybe just start this year, with one or two of those questions. Great point. Any other questions or comments from anyone? I have just a few more slides just to share. But if you do, I can stay on the line. And Kathy, if you have a moment, if you can stay after we're done, if anybody has any other questions. So just to let everyone know, we are winding up the series for Take Out the Stigma of Grief sessions. This afternoon at 2 o'clock, we're going to talk about unique ways to remember your loved ones. Happily ever after divorce. This is the grief that's associated with going through the journey of a divorce. So we have a woman on that is going to share her personal and very unique story, and how basically she has taken her mess and made it her message and is empowering other single moms that are recently divorced. And then we also have a lawyer who's going to be on the phone or on the Zoom session with us and give us some tips and some things to keep in mind and some helpful advice as you or perhaps someone you know is going through. And then tomorrow we're going to wrap up with a very brief presentation, just a bit of a Thanksgiving blessing to really, in a year where so much has been taken away from us, just a reminder of the many ways that we can give thanks and show our gratitude. And some blessings. We have some prayers from our chaplains as well. And Take Out the Stigma of Grief also relates to take out food and drink. These organizations have partnered with us and Wing Moms, the main sponsor of this program, and they are donating a portion of their proceeds to Delaware Hospice. I mentioned to Kathy just before I got on the call, I'm so excited because between 3 and 3:30, I'm getting a charcuterie board delivered to my house. Always wanted to have one and said, you know what, this is the year. I'm chalking it up to a couple dollars going to Delaware Hospice, and I'm going with that. And I don't think it's going to make it to Thanksgiving. I think it's going to be dinner tonight. Frank's Liquors is also a popular one right now, I hear. They have an Advent wine calendar, and they're donating $20. And in the money that is being donated, it makes things possible, like a lot of our free programs, our bereavement services, the support, our New Hope program for children. We have so many wonderful programs, not just hospice, that we can make possible and provide to our community as a nonprofit. So if you know any of these organizations, we would love for you to participate as well. Our Festival of Trees is going on right now. If you've attended in a past, you know how wonderful it is. See these magnificently decorated trees and wreaths. Our volunteers work hard all year making items to sell, in the little marketplace. So this year it is a little bit different. It has gone online. If you go to festivaloftreesde.org, you can see a video showing the trees. You can vote for your favorite, purchase an ornament in remembrance of someone. And we do have all those wonderful gifts. If you happen to vote,
Nicole, for Point to Point Wealth Planning's tree, that we also have a sponsored tree in there. I wouldn't
Yes,
mind.
you do. Okay. I like that plug. It is nice. I did see that tree. And, we're here for you. I have Kathy's information here. Kathy.j.bowers@ampf.com, and her information, like I said, I'll send out after this presentation, that checklist, so you'll have her information. And, we're here as well if you have any questions. Some of our other programs, in addition to hospice, palliative care program, which is basically an extra layer of support. If you have a serious illness and are still seeking curative treatment, but need some help managing your symptoms, we can help. And we help not only the patients, but also the families as well. And finally, I mentioned Wing Mom earlier. They have been instrumental in putting this week together. They basically are building a village of moms, helping families and seniors. And they do basically anything you would need a girlfriend to do. If you needed some extra help, that could be helping your children, picking up someone at the airport, watching an elderly parent while you run to the grocery store, even doing loads of laundry. Wing Moms does it all, and they've actually recently started Wing Dads. So if you need some handyman work done around the house, that is something that is possible as well. And then finally, just a shout out to our corporate sponsors. As a nonprofit, we rely heavily on sponsors, donors, volunteers in the community. And together we are able to offer such wonderful services to everyone in the state of Delaware and a little bit beyond. And that is it that we have for today. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to be with us. I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving. Stay safe, wash your hands, and look forward to seeing you in the future.